In this session, I want to talk a little bit about the training that you're giving your cleaning techs on communication with the customer, because they run into the customer at night when we're not there. So in reality, your cleaning techs probably are talking more to the customer than you are. They become more familiar with Bill or Susan than they do with you or the area manager or the supervisor, the area supervisor that you may have. But have you ever had an employee say, we don't do that, it's not in the contract? You know, I say in some of my workshops that you want a quick way to lose a customer? Tell them that's not in the contract. You know, and frankly, I had to work with my own people quite a bit on this. You know, well, we don't do that. We don't? I thought we did anything as long as the customer was willing to pay for it. You know, or even if the customer would ask, do you do this kind of service? And my employees, not wanting more work, would say, no, we don't do that. And my response was, yes, we do. And then, you know, we would discuss what is it that you exactly want, and then we would see if we could get it done, even if we had to use a subcontractor. But our job is to be of service and of satisfaction to our customer. Or have they ever said when they were asked to vacuum better that, you know, if they could have a better vacuum cleaner, they could certainly do a better job? Ever had anybody say that? Ever had a supervisor or a cleaner unload on the customer on all the problems you're having in the building? I remember several years ago obtaining a very sizable contract. And the prospect called me, who became a customer. And I've been working on them for, oh gosh, years. Very prestigious account in the city that I'm talking about. And they said, do you still want this business? You know, and of course I do. So I went out to visit them, and during the course of the conversation, I asked them, what prompted you to call me now? You know, I'm glad you did, and I'm ready to go, but I'm always curious as to what prompts a prospect to call. And he said, well, you know what? Two things happened to me. I was talking to some of the cleaners at night, and all they could tell me was all the problems they had. You know, the vacuums didn't work. The belts were broken on the vacuums that they had. The equipment was terrible. And they just not get any support from the home office. Then he says, I called the owner of the company, thinking, well, I'll talk to the owner and he can come on out. And he said, what I really wanted to talk to him about, he said, I'd kind of forgotten what the employees were saying. Although it bothered me, I'd kind of just forgot about it. And he says, but I talked to the owner, and what we had is another building the same size as what we had on the drawing board, and I was being asked to submit a budget to my higher-ups in order that they could determine the cost of maintaining that facility. So I called Jerry, asked him to come out, and as he's walking into the building, he said, you know, I'm sorry we got all these problems, you know, but I'm working on them, and you know, my people don't show. And he went through a litany of all these problems that he was having. And he said, you know what I called Jerry for? I wanted to give him more business. All I wanted was a budget number or approximate budget number that I could pass on. And he said, he gives me all these problems before I even tell him what it is I want. So here was not only a problem with the employees, the line worker, the cleaning tech, having a problem with the customer communication. Here was the owner of the company. So he said, I called you. He says, I just figured I'd had enough. If his employees were complaining, and he was already complaining to me about his help and his problems before he even knew what it was I wanted, he said, I thought it was time to make a change. So all of these excuses have been used, I'm sure. You know, we don't have a good equipment. That's not in the contract. How about the one that some employees have used? They don't pay me enough to do that. I've heard that one. I've heard that one in my travels to my clients and going in. One of the things I do when I do a consulting job is I spend time in the evening with some of the cleaning crews, because I just like to see how things are going out in the field. And I pick a building at random and away I go. And I've had that happen to me several times. They don't pay me enough to do that, or something of that nature. And so I'm sure you've heard that. Maybe we need to do some retraining. But I want to suggest to you that it's critical that you have training for your employees on how to communicate with the customer when they run into them at night. And it's not a sin to say, thank you for calling that to my attention, I'll bring that up with my supervisor. There's nothing wrong with that. But to have these other answers will lose you a lot of business. And it isn't because, many times, now some of these responses I gave you were just downright rude, but sometimes they just don't know how to respond. They've been complaining for a week or two about the equipment, and all of a sudden here comes a customer and it's just, I'll unload. By golly, I need new equipment. So anyway, I suggest that you start giving your employees some customer communication training. It could save you an account.